Look at your kitchen counter. It is sitting there, a quiet white powder, cheap, ordinary, completely overlooked. But if you took that powder away 500 years ago, empires would have collapsed, armies would have mutinied, and entire cities would have starved to death in the winter. This is not just a seasoning, it is a rock, a geological anomaly that humans are biologically hardwired to crave. Every single cell in your body relies on it to send electrical signals from your brain to your muscles. Without it, you die. For thousands of years, humans knew this. They fought wars over it, used it to buy human beings, and built the first global trade routes just to move it across continents. This ordinary white crystal is the hidden engine of human civilization, the radical, bloody, and surprising history of salt. 4,000 years ago, before refrigeration, there were no cooling grids, no ice boxes, and no electricity. If you killed an animal in the summer, the meat rotted within hours as bacteria feasted on the moisture and released lethal toxins. This meant human survival was entirely seasonal. Humans ate what they killed immediately, gorged during harvest time, and starved during the winter. Population growth was strictly capped by the expiration date of food. Everything changed when humans looked at the white crust forming on the edges of dried-up desert lakes. They noticed that animals licked it, and they noticed that meat covered in this crust did not rot it dried out and stayed edible for weeks, months, or even years. Suddenly, food could travel, survive the winter, and feed an army on a long march. The discovery of salt preservation was the ancient equivalent of inventing the internet, breaking the barrier of time and space for human survival. The race to control it began immediately. The story starts in the earth. Most of the salt we use today is millions of years old, the residue of ancient oceans that dried up long before humans existed, leaving massive underground veins of pure sodium chloride. Ancient humans first harvested it where nature made it easy. In coastal salt marshes and dried inland basins. One of the earliest recorded salt works happened in China around 6000 BCE at Lake Yuncheng, a natural salt lake where the summer sun evaporated the water and left a thick crust of crystals. The early Chinese kingdoms realized that whoever controlled this lake controlled the region, and by the 21st century BCE, Xia dynasty rulers were fighting wars specifically to secure it. Centuries later, the Han Dynasty took it a step further, realizing that people could choose not to buy silk or wine, but had to buy salt. The state created an absolute monopoly on its production. It became the world's first state-run cash cow, and the tax revenue from salt paid for the construction of the Great Wall of China, a giant stone fortress built to keep out invading armies, funded entirely by tiny white crystals sprinkled on bowls of rice. Meanwhile, in ancient Egypt, salt became the foundation of both life and the afterlife. The Egyptians used a specific blend of harvested desert salts called natron, which absorbs moisture rapidly and acts as a natural disinfectant. When a pharaoh died, priests packed the organs and the body inside massive piles of natron for 40 days, sucking out every molecule of water and halting cellular decay to turn a decomposing corpse into an immortal mummy. But the Egyptians did not just preserve their dead, they preserved their economy. They used salt to pickle fish from the Nile River, and this salted fish became Egypt's chief export, traded across the Mediterranean to buy copper, timber, and gold. As the ancient world grew into the medieval era, salt became the ultimate geopolitical leverage. If your country had salt mines, you were a superpower. If you did not, you were at the mercy of your neighbors. The Romans understood this perfectly, constructing the Via Salaria, the salt road specifically to transport salt from the salt pans at the mouth of the Tiber River directly into the heart of Rome. Roman soldiers were often paid a specific allowance to buy salt, termed a salarium, which is the direct root of our modern word salary. When someone says you are not worth your salt, they are using a literal phrase from the Roman legions where a lazy soldier's salarium was cut. Salt was so valuable that it was traded ounce for ounce with gold as a universal currency. This dynamic propelled Venice to become the richest empire in the Mediterranean. Built on a muddy lagoon with no fields for farming, no forests for timber, and no gold mines, Venice turned its shallow waters into massive evaporation pans to produce a highly pure, pristine, white salt. They used the profits to buy ships and conquer trade routes. When local competitors tried to build their own salt pans, the Venetians used military force to destroy them, forcing every merchant in the region to bring their goods to Venice first and imposing heavy taxes paid in salt. The stunning marble palaces of Venice were quite literally built on a foundation of sodium chloride. While Venice ruled the sea, Eastern Europe sat on a gold mine of a different color. Deep beneath the town of Wieliczka in Poland lay a colossal deposit of rock salt formed 13 million years ago. In the 13th century, miners went underground into incredibly dangerous conditions where methane gas trapped in the salt walls could ignite at any second and the dark was absolute. But the reward was too massive to ignore, as the Wieliczka salt mine generated 1/3 of the entire annual revenue for the Kingdom of Poland. Because miners spent their entire lives down there, they carved an entire underground civilization out of the gray rock salt, including grand staircases, massive chandeliers made of translucent salt crystals, and dozens of statues. They even carved the chapel of St. Kinga. a massive cathedral deep underground where the walls, the altar, and the floor are made entirely of solid salt. The power of salt to trigger revolutions did not stop in the Middle Ages. It actively shaped the modern world. By the 20th century, the British Empire controlled India and maintained total control over profits by passing the India Salt Act, making it illegal for Indians to harvest their own salt from the ocean and forcing them to buy highly taxed British imports. In March 1930, Mahatma Gandhi decided to break that law, walking 240 miles to the coastal village of Dandi. Thousands of people joined his march, and when he reached the Arabian Sea, he walked down to the shore, reached into the mud, and picked up a tiny lump of natural salt. That single, quiet act of civil disobedience broke the British monopoly, sparked nationwide protests, and led to the arrest of over 60,000 people. A massive global empire was brought to its knees. Triggered by a handful of sea salt today, things look completely different. If you go to a grocery store, a container of salt costs less than $1. We throw it on icy roads by the ton and use it without thinking. It went from a precious currency to an industrial commodity in the 19th and 20th centuries through solution mining. Engineers began pumping high-pressure water deep into underground salt veins to dissolve the rock into a supersaturated brine, which was then pumped back to the surface where massive vacuum evaporators boiled the water away using a fraction of the energy ancient civilizations required. Most people think salt is just for food, but only about 6% of the world's salt production actually ends up on our dinner plates. The remaining 76% goes to industrial and chemical manufacturing, while 18% is used for road de-icing. Salt is broken down into its core chemical elements, chlorine and sodium. Chlorine is used to make PVC plastics, disinfect drinking water, and manufacture pharmaceuticals, while sodium is critical for manufacturing glass, paper, and detergents. Without cheap industrial salt, modern manufacturing stops instantly. There is also a profound medical twist to this modern-era iodized salt. In the early 1900s, a medical crisis swept through the American Midwest and parts of Europe as millions of people developed massive swellings in their necks called goiters, and children were born with severe intellectual disabilities. Scientists discovered the cause was a profound lack of iodine in the soil. The solution was a stroke of genius, adding a microscopic amount of potassium iodide to table salt, a substance everyone eats regardless of wealth. In 1924, Morton Salt began selling iodized salt across the United States, and almost overnight, the goiter epidemic vanished, marking 1/3 of the most successful public health interventions in human history. We went from fighting bloody wars over salt to buying it for pennies, taming the mineral that built empires. But as we look to the future, salt is changing the game again. Right now, scientists are trying to solve the world's looming clean water crisis. We have a massive planet covered in oceans, but we cannot drink them because of the salt, and current desalination technology requires enormous amounts of energy to strip salt away from water molecules. Whoever figures out how to cheaply and efficiently separate salt from water on a massive scale will control the next era of human history, securing the ultimate resource for survival. The white crystal on your kitchen counter has already shaped our past, funded our walls, and saved our health. Now, it holds the key to our future. Next time you shake a bit of salt onto your food, look closely at those tiny square crystals. You are holding the rock that created civilization.